Hello and welcome to a new episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. My name is Mehmet, and each episode I discuss different topics from the technology like digital transformation, cybersecurity, emerging tech, AI, no code, and so on. And at the same time, we discuss topics related to business, especially in the startup and the entrepreneurship. And in some episodes, I would have with me special guests who are thought leaders, who are entrepreneurs themselves, who would share with us their insights about both the world of startups and tech if possible. And today I'm very happy to have with me Gary Garth, who's joining me. I think you are in Colombia, right, Gary?
That's correct, Mehmet. Medellin, Colombia, to be exact.
Okay, nice. So Gary, he's an entrepreneur himself, and he have like long experience. He's a serial entrepreneur. He started many companies, but the area that he specialized in, and I think it will resonate also with the audience, because we talk about startups, but starting a startup without getting the revenue and surpassing certain amount of revenue, if we don't reach that, it doesn't make any sense. So this is why I have Gary with me today. Gary, just introduce yourself, like a little bit about your background and what you are up to.
Absolutely. And thanks again for having me on your show, Mehmet. I am a serial entrepreneur. I'm a part-time angel investor, invested in a few projects, and I'm an author of a recent book published called The 0 to 100 Million Sales Blueprint. I run a couple of companies right now. They're all in the arena of tech and digital marketing. So to a couple of projects I focus on a lot right now is a growth accelerator for companies, where we help companies with a 360-degree solution. So it's lead generation, technology enablement, and then also sales enablement. I'm currently living in Medellin, Colombia. Medellin, Colombia, to everybody in the show, since I presume the majority has a strong interest in technology, etc. Medellin has this vision of becoming the Silicon Valley of Latin America.
Mm-hmm.
They actually have this program here run by the government, where they invite foreign investors to come down if you work within tech, and then you can be set up and get 5 years tax exemption. So that's when people ask me, what the heck are you doing in Medellin, Colombia? Then when I was running my last company, I ran an agency for about 10 years. We were fortunate to experience some exponential growth. Like, we had thousands of clients, 300 employees, were nominated fastest growing company 4 years in a row on the Inc. 5000 list. But long story short, when I was then at that point living in Miami, this organization, Pro Colombia, came knocking on my door and said, Gary, why are you guys not in Colombia? And I was like, that's a damn good question. Fast forward a couple of years, I sold the shares in that company, and I decided, it's time to pack my bags and try a little adventure south of the border. So here I am, and that's a little background of me.
That's great. And I'm always curious to learn, especially from fellow entrepreneurs about their successes. So you have successfully exited 6 companies, including an 8-figure digital marketing agency. I am sure maybe it's a traditional question, but what were the biggest lessons you learned throughout this journey?
It's a difficult questions because I have a lot. I always tell people my book could have been labeled 101 Things Not to Do in Business, because it's it's accumulation of my learnings. But I think one thing that has stood by me and still does is, well, two things. One is customer centricity. Make everything around the customer. Secondly, equally important is putting sales first. So I say that because I work with a lot of companies. I've invested in several companies. I manage marketing campaigns, sales campaigns for thousands of companies, and I saw a certain pattern. You could have the greatest concept in the world and a very strong position, affordable product, better than the competition. But if you're lacking in sales, essentially you're gonna cease to exist. And it's common knowledge: 80% of companies, startups, cease to exist within 18 months, right? What is it more? Furthermore, 10% of those remaining 20% don't even make it above $1 million in annual recurring revenue. So for me, I always tell founders of new startups, etc., it's like, you have to also become the chief sales officer, right? You cannot just expect to hire somebody else and for them to sell your products if you can't do it. And if you do not have that skill set, then you gotta somehow figure out how to complement that. Because I always say I'd rather have a fulfillment problem than a sales problem. Obviously, you need to have a strong product, etc. But essentially, if you generate revenue, if you have enough sales, then you can always find solutions for the rest, typically, right? So that would be my two big takeaways, I would say, after all these different projects.
That's very informative, very to the point, I would say. Thank you for sharing these lessons. Now, being an expert now after all this long journey, I would say, in an entrepreneurship, and because now you become an investor yourself. So if you can tell me, like, how do you evaluate startups to say, yep, I should invest in these guys. They look like they have a high potential. What would be the characteristics of such startups?
Yeah, great question. I would say, first and foremost, as a disclaimer, I'm not your conventional angel investor. What I saw is just in my last project, we were reselling marketing services to other marketing agencies in a white label format. So I came across all these different tools, dashboards, software as a service platforms that we needed as additional plugins in order to create our overall solution. And very often I saw these great products where I was like, damn, this is better than the rest of the market. Why is this cheaper? Why are they not more popular? What am I missing here? What's my blind spot here? So what I try to do is try to look for great products that are already have some sort of market penetration, but maybe they don't have a strong go-to-market strategy. The business development efforts are lacking, because that's where, as an angel investor, I could come in, apply my skill set, add some strategic know-how, add a little bit of capital, add my infrastructure and support network, and then aim to 10x sales. Basically, that's the kind of vehicles. But when I came down here, just to rewind the clock, 2 years ago, I went to all these different tech startup conferences, etc. I got pitched at least 100 times, and I see that many startups, the majority, especially in tech, they put a lot of emphasis on the product, etc. But sales and the go-to-market strategy is like a little bit left to the end. So when I came in and asked and like simple questions like, what's our client acquisition strategy, and what's going to be the burn rate, what's your 3-year financial forecast, who's the competition, have you done research on them, they were lacking all the answers in that. So that would be another detractor. And I would say, as an entrepreneur, as a new startup, you're looking for funding, you got to know the answers to all those questions. Like, that's just a red flag when you don't, because you want somebody who's like turned every single stone and investigated, like, okay, how are we going to make this successful? And that's by no means that you should go into some analysis paralysis, but it's just, you don't want to be betting with that kind of investment, right? Then we'd rather go to the casino and put it on red or black.
Yeah. That's will bring me to ask you the following question, right? And I asked that question on purpose. Now, you mentioned when you were doing your introduction the importance of sales, and I think I would be surprised if any founder doesn't know that if they don't themselves have the sales skill, they should do something about it. Now, I know that you wrote the book you wrote recently was all about how to go from zero to $100 million, right?
Yes.
Now, I want you a little bit, of course, like we will not, we will not read the book here on the air today, but I mean, if you can like just summarize the key things, that founders should know, right? And what is the roadmap that they have to plan, so they know, yes, we are now in day zero. we're going to reach 200 million. And in your opinion, it's
Yes.
like a question inside the question. What is the normal time frame to reach this milestone?
Oh, that's typically like a 5 year to a decade at least, right? And obviously, I would say the first 0 to 1 million is the most difficult one, up to 10 million for that matter, right? Because that's where there's a lot of transformational processes in a company. What I put in my book is everything from the beginning, begin with the end in mind, and then build out a plan, a framework accordingly. And yes, you're right. Most founders, everybody knows sales is instrumental for success, but how they attack it is a little bit backwards, right? I put a whole chapter on that, like failing to prepare is preparing to fail, right? Where essentially you want to start with having a sales plan, right? Instead of very common, it's like, okay, we have a product, let's build a website. Here's a pricing scheme. Let's start and go and pitch. Now that's okay to get some initial feedback, etc. But initially, you want to start by doing proper research, understanding who's your ideal customer profile, and maybe even doing mystery shopping with the competition to see how do they position themselves. How can you find some unique differentiating factors that can give you some market share in a an intriguing way for prospects. So I start out with a whole section on strategic marketing, because that's key to when you start launching all your marketing campaigns, so you can send the right message to the right people at the right time and construct your offer, right? Then the next thing I dive into is like, once you've done all this as a founder, right? Maybe you're a great engineer, a great programmer, and you just don't have the sales DNA. And even though I put in my book that great salespeople are made, not born, I do also say that you should double down on your strengths and delegate the rest. So I have a whole chapter devoted to, okay, if you want to go out and find a co-founder, then I have a questionnaire with 50 questions to identify, do we have the same values? Do we have the same vision? So that we can align, because we all know if you go into a partnership and it goes south, that can be both when it's successful, you experience a massive success, and it's like, how do we manage equity, dividends, dividend distribution? What if we get an offer? That you need to align on everything before, right? It's almost like a prenup, so to speak, at least making sure that aligning values and vision and everything. And if you don't have that co-founder, how can you go out and make a key hire by, for instance, creating an employee stock option plan and providing some equity over a 4 or 5 year period to get the right people on board that has that long-term vision as well? That's a key element. And then next thing, after you've done all the research, I say, well, very common, there's, especially in B2B, is direct sales is common, but channel sales is often overlooked. Like, in other words, finding a distribution network that can be through affiliates, it can be, white label agreements. Some of the biggest companies, right? Google, Microsoft, all of them rely on channel sales. It's the predominant revenue driver for them. So investigate what are the right sales channels for you. I have a whole chapter for. Then next is, okay, now we've got to start building out a sales team. And it's okay, how do we find the right sales hires? I'm under the notion, again, that great salespeople are made, not born. So instead of finding an experienced rep at a competing company that's going to ask for 6 figures and you're already bootstrapped as a startup, instead try to look for, like, I have top 20 attributes you should look for. So you're looking for, like, the attitude and the attributes, and then see if you have the right coaching framework, if you have a sales plan, if you have a 90-day onboarding plan, and you have all the elements in place, you can make most people successful. So then it goes into sales management. Then it goes into the best advertising channels as for acquisition, how to complement inbound and outbound together. It goes into sales operations, a huge one for me, because it's all about, processes, documentation, CRM, integrating system, etc. And then it goes into several other chapters, such as the significance of technology for scale, which is, it's like, from the recent state of sales report by Salesforce, they clearly indicate that today's leading companies all use technology as a multiplier, right, to accelerate it. So, but I've also seen the flip side in terms of companies that just adapt to they adopt every single new cool application that is launched, and then they fail to see, okay, how's everything going to be integrated, and is my team going to adopt the technologies? Then it goes into outsourcing certain things of your sales and business operation, and how to integrate that. So it covers the whole spectrum in terms of like, okay, here's a journey as you're scaling a company. What are the considerations you need to make?
Yeah.
That's the 10,000-foot overview. A very brief one.
And what's the time frame? Because I asked you about time frame. What do you think is, the average time frame to reach the 100 million ARR?
5 to 10 years.
10 years. Yeah, makes sense. You touch on a point which is, like about the culture, value, and the other stuff. But at the same time, I like to listen from different opinions, and this is why I'm asking you this question. Now, of course, you have the phase where you are still in the early phases. You're trying to figure things out. Then there is the moment which we have the product market fit, right?
Yes.
Right. And then after the product market fit, this is where you start to think about the next scale, I would say. Now, talking about this, what I'm curious to know from your experience is sometimes we see startups, once they reach the product market fit, they pivot, right, a lot, and then they drive their sales towards that. But while, the market maybe doesn't want this pivot at that time. What is your, general, I would say, advice for companies that think they are struggling, but actually maybe they have to wait a little bit before they go to the next phase? Like what really they should wait for before doing this pivot in their messaging, in their product, in their technologies, whatever?
Yes, great question. That's typically where a lot, they crumble in that process because it's damn difficult, right? Maybe you've proven the concept to some extent with some clients. You got a great salesperson. You tried it in a certain geo, but then there's certain other factors. If you want to expand it into new markets, new segments with a different approach, or you're just trying to add a team to the equation and scale things, right? Maybe you've been very hands-on in the process with everything. So I would say the key word there is, shoot bullets, fire bullets, and then shoot cannonballs. So once you lock yourself in on something and there's a product market fit, to your point, you prove the concept, you scale it in the same dimension. What's key for that, and I think everybody knows that, but kind of forget it when you're in that journey, is documentation. It's documentation, it's implementation of processes, and it's try to automate as best as possible with a coaching framework overlapped about it. Because I've seen a lot of different scenarios, and I've done a lot of mistakes where, sometimes it's just about document, and they have a whole knowledge base with all these processes, but people don't know how to navigate, how to adopt it. Things get lost in translation. So it's all about determining the best practices, rolling them out, putting them into systems, and then educating your team on it. Because that's at the same time, in order to scale, you need to scale human capital, so to speak, and get everybody to perform at the best. I think that's the difficult part. So if you pivot at that point into a new product category, you're starting all over. You're almost destined to fail, in my opinion. And I think we share.
You press the reset button.
Yes.
That's cool. Gary, I'm asking this question because myself, I always wanted to, have this multiple startups, being a serial entrepreneur. And I'm still on the hunt, I would say, for the right path, let's call it. I hope that I started it now. What I wanted to ask you is, if someone want really to have, the same career path that you have done, what are the steps that they should follow? Because I know one of the things I try to do on the show, other than just sharing news and tech trends, I'm interested also for people to learn from, successful entrepreneurs. And this is why I'm asking you this question.
That's a difficult one. I would say obviously you pick up a copy of my book. That's a quick way to get on in my head and understand. I unwrap all the learnings. It is endorsed by the head of sales at Google, Microsoft, and Amazon, and a lot of other smart folks. So, and I basically absorbed a lot of the learnings from all these great people I had the privilege to work with. But to that extent, I would say, well, really, what is your objective? On my end, I think it's I've typically always had a great hunger. So I think the biggest thing is assessing yourself, Mehmet, and saying, okay, how bad do I want this? And is it tied up with a why? I know that may sound a little fluffy and so forth, but we all have the resources and resourcefulness in order to make things happen. Like on my current journey, it's because we specialize a lot in helping companies from a growth acceleration standpoint. But one of the big verticals that we penetrated is the addiction treatment and the mental health care industry. For me, it's very personal because I had a close to me family that has struggled with those issues. So indirectly helping these like 23 million Americans that are suffering from addictions, or the 1 out of 3 Americans that currently experience a health issue, mental health issues. For me, it's almost a little bit of, it's my purpose to some extent. I'm very driven. I feel a great reward, and that helps me, put forth an extra effort and go through the hard times. When I feel like giving up, I get reminded about it. I created this called the Goals, Grit, and Greatness Planner. And I offer that to all my employees and clients, et cetera, because it's been a great tool for myself to stay on track, try to establish my goals based on my purpose and my internal drivers, and then constantly daily remind myself of that. Because if you don't do that, then it's an uphill. There's going to be a lot of adversity. You're going to fail. So
yeah. Awesome advice, I would say. Now, before we close, final question I want to ask you, Gary. Like, again, you are in the scene of startups and business and tech. What are the trends that you are seeing? What are the hot startups, I would say, from what you're following? In which verticals, in which areas?
That's a difficult question to answer.
Oh, sorry,
actually,
I'm
because
asking difficult questions today.
yeah. No. I'm thinking, because I think there's so many different shifts occurring right now. I don't want to say anything with AI and ChatGPT, et cetera, because the whole world is talking about that. But it's
Exactly.
obvious. It's obvious. I'm trying to think of other categories that I'm considering. I think everything in general is going to be much more performance based. Whichever it is, whether it's marketing, whether it's sales, whether it's consulting, everything is going to be like, am I going to pay for a desired outcome and an incremental ROI, or the guaranteed effect? I think the market in general is too saturated with promising offers and et cetera. So I think that's what we're working towards. I think AI is going to be a big amplifier of that whole notion.
Yeah, sorry, I said final question, but I should not skip this one.
Here comes the curveball.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, because recently I'm asking this to my guests, and I like to have different opinions. Are we going to see more solopreneurs or one-man businesses?
I don't think so.
You
frankly,
don't think so? Okay.
no.
Fine.
Is that aligned with the common answer you get for that question?
No, I get mixed answers usually. Some people are very excited about the topic. Some people they approached it similar to what you did. Honestly, I believe it's a movement. Let's see how long it will continue, because you know what's happening with the tech layoffs and all the stuff that's going on. That's great, but also to hear from an expert also about your views, because I like to have mixed views also on my show. So that's good to know. Well, Gary, thank you very much for having the time. What I will do, I will share with the audience the links for the website of Gary, where you can find his books, where you can find the guide that he just showed also as well. And if you want to connect with him, thank you very much, Gary, again for joining me on this episode. And for the audience, if you are watching this on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you are listening this on your favorite podcasting platform, also don't forget to subscribe there and recommend us and share it with your friends and colleagues. And as usual, if you have any question, comment about this episode or the show in general, don't hesitate to reach out to me either by email, Twitter, or LinkedIn. Thank you very much, and until we meet next time, bye bye.
Thank you, man.